everybody, and welcome back to The Search. My name is Lisa, and I'm glad to have you. Today, guys, the verdict is down, the sentence is out, and does the time fit the crime? Yes, guys, I am talking about Jared Dicus and the murder of his wife, Anggy Diaz. First, I want to say welcome back for all my returnees. If you are new here, welcome. I cover unsolved, missing, and varieties of crime. I like to focus on more unsolved and cases that need to be heard, but I do a variety and some requests that I've been asked. So I want to thank everybody that has returned, that is helping grow my channel, and I appreciate everyone. Guys, today this case is very dark, but it needs to be heard, and I want to know back from you, do we feel justice is served? So let's talk about it. So if you are not familiar with the case, this was a case that happened in Waller County, Texas, which, if you're not familiar with, is close to Magnolia area, and from what I understand is about 45 minutes out of the Houston area. This is about a couple named Jared Dicus and his newlywed Anggy Diaz. The incident happened last January 11th, 2023. But let's find out what this couple's about. Again, her name is Anggy Diaz. Let me tell you a little bit about Anggy. She came from Nicaragua. She had been in America for 3 years. She actually had an uncle here, so she came in, I believe, under he was like a guardian. But like I said, she was 21 when this incident happened in 2023. So she was right around the 18 coming here. But she had come here with her uncle. So she had very little family here, but she did. Trying to find out what type of person she was, because I always like to just really talk about who they are and not let the crime and how they left define them. She worked at a local market. It was like a Mexican meat market. They like butchered meats, but she was like a cashier. She helped, and I believe she actually held down a second job to do like extra things around there. So there's a reason though why she worked 2 jobs, guys. She was actually sending money back to a family member in her country that needed money for cancer treatments. This is a 21-year-old, only been in America 3 years, and was working her butt off. I think to just hear what she was doing already tells you what type of soul she had. Listening to some statements from some neighbors, doing some research through Facebook, people that knew her, just talked about just how kind and how sweet she was and what a hard worker. So, digging more into this, yeah, of course, this is where Jared meets her, from what I can understand. And everybody said, that they hit it off, that he really liked her. They start dating, and he marries her. So they get married in October of 2022. This isn't a very long between the time they were married to the time of the incident, which is January 11th. Now, I will tell you though, in between these times between them dating, getting married, and then this happening, Jared did have like 2 months prior to this happening. So right after he got married, he actually, I believe, got a DUI. I do know that there was some domestic violence calls, which is one of the reasons that I wanted to do this case. Because, guys, it gets worse. It gets worse in this story, and it gets worse in domestic violence situations. So, on January 11th, everything seemed to be a normal day. Now, I want to tell you that they both lived in like a cabin behind his parents' property. And that was kind of the norm, I feel like, in that area. The parents lived up front, they lived in the back, and it was like a studio apartment. So it wasn't like a bunch of bedrooms and all that. Pretty basic. So that day, I don't know what went wrong. I don't know What changed, they don't exactly know. But the family said that they could tell something was wrong down there. Now, at the time on this day, Jared was actually seen going up to the store that she worked at, walking in and just grabbing a beer, opening it, and just kind of walking out and not paying for it. He did not really talk to anybody or say anything, but what was weird was that she didn't show up for her shift that day. So he's coming in, she's not talking to anybody, she doesn't show up for her shift. That's not like her. And I think that started the events of the parents like, okay, what's, going on? Well, I'll tell you, the next thing we know is the parents call 911. They call 911 and they let them know that they need to come to their house immediately because something bad has happened. I will tell you that when the sheriff got there and the officers all got there, they did have Jared on the property. He did not try to leave or anything like that. They did not have to chase him down or do anything. He was there with his parents when they got there. When they walked in there, it was gruesome scenes that they had seen. She was definitely gone. There was no able to save her. Without going in too deep, just for common courtesy, I'll tell you, it is about as worse that you can think. He had basically, it's even hard for me to get out, but he had removed limbs and things of that nature, including her head. Yeah, so it's so sickening.
Upon arrival, they did find a deceased person inside the house, and the suspect placed into custody for what we're assuming is going to be a murder charge in the end. It was a portion of a body dismembered and a residence that was covered in blood. It's a gruesome scene at best. At this point, the evidence shows it was a kitchen knife. We do have a confession, but it is still under further investigation. It's a gruesome scene, and both sides of these families are going to be altered by it.
And it's hard to even tell stories like this. And people wonder, why do we do things like this and why do we tell? I'll tell you why I do it. Because, one, I look at how it was handled by the judicial system. And also, I want to get out how domestic violence can get to this point with little to no signs, and people around you don't even see it or know it. You have to hear sometimes these stories so that we can protect people and be more aware. Even the sheriff had a hard time telling the story to the reporters. Now, they take Jared on in, all right, and at first he's put on a $500,000 bond, and the prosecutor, they're like, no. First of all, he's already had the domestic violence calls, he's had the DUI, but this heinous crime, are you kidding me? Anyway, it was put up to $1 million. He did not big bond. Okay, now, during all this, the family is totally distraught. At the time, they made a GoFundMe, and I want to show you that. I believe it was put up by one of her relatives, her GoFundMe by Irvin. In this, it says, a parent's worst nightmare. Anggy Diaz, 21 years old, daughter, sister, niece, and a friend. Our family is shattered by the loss of a young life. She was the light of our family and community, always with a smile and cheerful personality. The absence of her from our lives will be felt forever. I started a funeral fundraiser to help cover the cost of Angie's funeral expenses. Please consider donating if you can. Now, the uncle who manages this states, of course, he was the legal guardian of Anggy Diaz. With the permission, the family funds will be transferred to use to cover the funeral cost, legal assistance, transfer her body back to her country in Nicaragua, where the funeral permits, and family additional expenses. So that was what the GoFundMe was for, and it was put up by the uncle. So basically trying to get her body back to rest in her country. She came to America to work really hard and to build a life, and even to still help her family back home. To have, at 21, a newlywed, a man that she thought was going to be the American dream, and it ended up being her nightmare. Her nightmare. She came to our country and did exactly what she wanted to do and what she needed to do and what was asked of her to legally to do. So, with that being said, while he was awaiting trial, of course, there was negotiations between the attorneys. Do we go through with a trial? The family was involved in this. I will tell you that Jared did go ahead and plead guilty. There was consideration, would he try to plead mental illness? Because, like they say, when if they can prove anything, that he did not know that what he was doing at the time, he was not in his right mind, one jury member can buy into it, and things can happen. So, just for instance, like how he went into a store that she never showed up at, grabs a beer, doesn't talk to anybody, and walks out, that could be taken two different ways. That could be like, oh, that's somebody that is not acknowledging what they did at all, like they're walking around and not in this world, right? Or they're just narcissistic, like, you know what, screw y'all, it could just go many ways. During the pretrial phase of the case, the potential of mental health issues were raised, dependent of he could hold competency to stand trial. After a court-ordered examination, though, for competency, the defendant was deemed competent to stand trial. As part of the plea agreement, the defendant waived his rights to appeal the verdict, the sentence, and any potential defense to the prosecution, such as the insanity defense. Additionally, he had waived any conviction rights of habeas corpus. The district attorney office discussed the 40-year prison sentence agreement with the family of the victim prior to the entry of the plea and sentencing by the court. Waller County Criminal District Attorney Sean Whitmore said Waller County does not tolerate domestic violence. Heinous crimes like this one will not go unanswered. We will seek justice for the victims of domestic violence and send a message to the perpetrators that here we fight for our victims. The DA's office also thanks Waller County Sheriff's Office for their investigation and their service to the victim's family and to the people of Waller County. Now, that was by Sean Whitmore, Waller County Criminal District Attorney. The sentence came down on July 31st, 2024. So it's just out the last couple weeks, which is why I am covering now. You just heard everything that he was denied, agreed to deny. He would not mental insanity, everything I just said. He's agreeing to this. They're so tough in Texas on their stating, we're going to send a message. So what I want to know is from y'all. He received 40 years with an option for parole. He is sentenced to 40 years due to the aggravated nature of this offense. Jared will not be eligible for parole till 2043. He is 23 years old right now. You're telling me that he is up for parole in 2043. That is basically 19 years. So he will be 42 years old, and there's a possibility that he will be able to get out on parole after butchering and schmurdering his newlywed. Legal counsel has discussed things and think, oh, well, he'll probably, most likely, will not make it out on first parole, and due to the heinous crime, at least have to serve 80%. Well, in past things I've covered, and I'm sure if you've watched plenty of true crime, there is a potential that a murderer does get out on first chance of parole. Her family is in another country. In 19 years from now, we don't know. Would they have the funds to come? Who is going to be able to fight for her in 19 years? Let's be real about this. Yes, it's not just what the family says. There'll be a lot other stuff that goes in, even how he acts while he is incarcerated. I would hope, of course, the chances are no, he will not make parole, but there is that chance. And I'm wondering, this heinous crime, and we really want to drive home that if you murder your wife after already being in trouble and called on domestic violence, and you basically cut her up and do the worst that you possibly can to her, you might get 40 years, but look, if you do it young enough, you probably can be out in your 40s. I don't know if that's driving it home or not, guys. I don't know if that is. I want to hear what your opinion is. Now, if he serves the whole 40, he'll be out in his 60s. Angie doesn't get to be out in her 60s. She doesn't get to walk around in her 60s. She doesn't get a second chance in life in her 40s. So I really wanted to bring this case to light. I don't know why parole was even an option. This is where I'm just allegedly, this is all like my opinion, and I am not an attorney. What I'm saying is there could have been legal reasons, like for not going through and doing a trial and just pleading out, that all this goes together. But to have it in black and white from the district attorney of Waller County to talk about how they're going to drive it home for this heinous crime, and then to hear that he has an option of parole after 19 years and he's only 23, after what he's done, it's hard for me to digest. I want to turn it over to y'all, and I want to hear, what do y'all think? Do you think that this is driving it home for domestic violence? Mental health is at our worst right now, at least at what we've seen in many decades. There's a lot going on behind closed doors, and we want women and men to both feel that they are safe and that they can turn to the law and that they will be protected. After hearing this story, do you feel like that this system would protect you? I will say this, they did talk about saving the family from having to hear the terrible story, from having to have anybody come in and to have to talk about this crime, to put the family through it, for there to be a slight chance of a reasonable doubt or a slight chance of something. It may have gone different had they gone through a trial. Maybe he would have got the death penalty. I don't know. But that's here nor there. I just still think, if anything, why did we have to throw with chance of parole? So I love to hear people's opinions on what they think. At the end of every story, I like to refrain back to our victim, which is the part of the story that is the most important. And at the end of each episode, I do a ribbon. And the ribbon represents a prayer for our victim and a prayer for justice. So this is for Angie Diaz, 21 forever. Everyone, I will see you on the next search.